Jacob, one of the central figures of the Old Testament, was born into a family chosen by God to fulfill a divine promise. His life story is nothing short of remarkable, marked by struggle, transformation, and moments of profound spiritual significance. As the son of Isaac and the grandson of Abraham, Jacob belonged to a lineage blessed by God with a covenant that promised to make them into a great nation. Yet despite this extraordinary blessing, Jacob's path in life was anything but smooth. In fact, his very name, Jacob, meaning heel grabber or supplanter, foreshadowed the challenges and conflicts that would define much of his early years. From the moment of his birth, gripping the heel of his twin brother Esau, Jacob's life was characterized by rivalry and tension. As Jacob and Esau grew up, their relationship was anything but harmonious. The Bible paints a vivid picture of the tension between them, a tension that came to a head when Jacob, with the help of his mother, Rebekah, deceived his father, Isaac. Disguising himself as Esau, Jacob tricked his blind and aging father into giving him the blessing that rightfully belonged to his elder brother. This act of deception sowed deep bitterness between the two brothers, forcing Jacob to flee from his home to escape Esau's wrath. He sought refuge in the house of his uncle Laban, where he faced years of hardship and manipulation. But during this time of struggle, Jacob began to experience significant personal growth and divine encounters that would change the course of his life. One of the most pivotal moments in Jacob's spiritual journey happened at Bethel. Here, God appeared to him in a dream, reaffirming the covenant made to Abraham and Isaac. God promised Jacob that his descendants would multiply like the dust of the earth and spread out to the north, south, east, and west. This encounter at Bethel was not only a reassurance of God's promises, but also a turning point in Jacob's faith, solidifying his awareness of God's active role in his life. Before we go further into the details of Jacob's extraordinary journey, I want to take a moment to invite you to engage with us. If you're enjoying this deep dive into biblical history and learning from Scripture, consider subscribing to this channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these timeless lessons rooted in God's Word. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay connected and never miss an episode. Join us as we explore the stories and truths that continue to inspire faith and understanding today. Returning to Jacob's life, we see that his story is not merely one of struggle, it's also a story of profound transformation. After many years of toiling under his uncle Laban's manipulations, Jacob felt a deep longing to return to his homeland. This desire was not only about going home, it was also about reconciling with his estranged brother, Esau. His journey back marked a critical moment in his personal growth. Jacob, once known for his cunning and deceit, now sought to make amends for his past actions, no matter the cost. On his way back, Jacob had one of the most mysterious and impactful encounters of his life. Alone at night, Jacob wrestled with a man, a figure who is often understood as an angel or even a manifestation of God himself. This struggle was more than just a physical contest. It was deeply symbolic of Jacob's inner turmoil and his lifelong quest to find his place in God's plan. As the night gave way to dawn, the figure struck Jacob's hip, leaving him with a permanent limp. Yet Jacob refused to let go until he received a blessing. At the end of the struggle, the man gave Jacob a new name, Israel, meaning he who struggles with God. This name change was deeply significant. It marked a new identity and a new destiny for Jacob. No longer was he simply a man who schemed to take what belonged to others. He was now someone chosen and shaped by God to lead a great nation. This moment encapsulates the profound transformation that defined Jacob's journey. Jacob's legacy would be carried forward through his 12 sons, whose lives and stories formed the foundation of the 12 tribes of Israel. These sons were not just historical figures. They represented the diversity of human experience: courage, ambition, jealousy, repentance, and faith. Each son had a unique role to play in shaping the identity and destiny of the nation of Israel. Born to 4 women, Jacob's wives, Leah and Rachel, and their maidservants, Zilpah and Bilhah, these 12 sons were raised in a household filled with rivalry, favoritism, and complex family dynamics. Leah, Jacob's first wife, bore him 6 sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel, the wife Jacob loved most, had 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, gave birth to Dan and Naphtali, while Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, bore Gad and Asher. These 12 men would become the forefathers of the tribes that settled in the Promised Land, and their individual stories reveal profound lessons about human nature, family dynamics, and God's plan for his people. Each of Jacob's sons carried unique traits and destinies that would shape the future of the tribes of Israel. Some, like Judah and Joseph, rose to prominence and leadership, while others, like Reuben and Simeon, faced consequences for their impulsive or dishonorable actions. Judah, despite being the fourth born, became the ancestor of King David and eventually Jesus Christ. Joseph, beloved by Jacob, experienced trials and triumphs that symbolized God's providence and grace. Reuben, the firstborn, lost his birthright due to reckless behavior, while Simeon and Levi's violent tempers led to their diminished standing. To understand the story of Israel, it's essential to delve into the individual characteristics and destinies of Jacob's sons. Each one's life offers a unique lesson, whether through triumph, failure, or redemption. Reuben, for example, began with great promise as Jacob's firstborn, but squandered his potential through a single grave mistake. Simeon and Levi's violent revenge for their sister Dinah's defilement cost them their father's favor. Yet, despite their flaws, each son contributed to the nation's growth in a way that reflects God's redemptive plan. The 12 sons of Jacob each carried their own unique traits and destinies, which reflected not only their personal strengths and weaknesses, but also the future roles their descendants would play in the nation of Israel. The story of these men reveals a mix of great potential, deep flaws, and the transformative power of God's plan. While Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, the 4 eldest sons, are often remembered for their significant actions, both positive and negative, every one of Jacob's sons played a vital role in shaping the identity of the tribes that would descend from them. Their individual stories serve as cautionary tales and sources of inspiration, reminding us that God uses imperfect people to accomplish his perfect will. Reuben, the firstborn, who fell from grace. Reuben's position as the firstborn son gave him certain privileges, including a double portion of the inheritance and leadership over his brothers. In the culture of the time, the firstborn carried the weight of the family legacy, and Reuben was expected to step into this role with honor and strength. However, despite his potential, Reuben's story is marked by instability and failure. Reuben's first significant act, which demonstrated both his leadership potential and his flaws, occurred during the incident with Joseph. When the brothers, driven by jealousy, plotted to kill Joseph, it was Reuben who stepped in to prevent outright murder. He convinced them to throw Joseph into a pit instead, secretly planning to rescue him later and return him to their father. While this act showed a measure of responsibility and compassion, Reuben ultimately failed to follow through with his plan. During his absence, the other brothers sold Joseph into slavery, and Reuben's opportunity to save his younger brother was lost. However, Reuben's greatest failure came in an act of betrayal against his father. The Bible recounts that Reuben slept with Bilhah, one of Jacob's concubines and the mother of his brothers Dan and Naphtali. This action was not only a moral failure, but also a challenge to Jacob's authority as the head of the family. In the ancient world, such an act was seen as a grave insult, often intended to assert dominance. But in Reuben's case, it was likely a reckless and impulsive decision rather than a calculated move for power. Jacob was deeply hurt by this betrayal, though he did not confront Reuben immediately. Instead, he waited until his deathbed to address the incident. In his final blessings to his sons, Jacob spoke harshly of Reuben, saying, "Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel, for you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it." These words are heartbreaking as they reflect not only Jacob's disappointment but also the lost potential of Reuben's life. The description "turbulent as the waters" perfectly captures Reuben's character: unsteady, unpredictable, and ultimately unable to fulfill the responsibilities of leadership. Because of his instability, the rights of the firstborn were taken from him and divided among his brothers. Reuben's story serves as a reminder of the consequences of unchecked impulses and the importance of character and self-discipline. Despite his fall from grace, he remained a part of Jacob's family and continued to play a role in their collective story. However, his tribe, the descendants of Reuben, never rose to prominence in Israel, reflecting the shadow cast by their ancestors' actions. Simeon and Levi, brothers united in anger. Simeon and Levi, the second and third sons of Jacob and Leah, were known for their fierce loyalty to their family and their fiery tempers. Their defining moment came during the incident at Shechem, a story of both courage and excessive violence that had lasting consequences for their futures. The events at Shechem began with Dinah, Jacob's only daughter and their full sister, being defiled by Shechem, the son of Hamor, a local prince. Shechem, deeply infatuated with Dinah, sought to marry her after the assault and approached Jacob to propose an alliance between their families. While Jacob initially remained silent, Simeon and Levi were outraged by the dishonor done to their sister. They believed such an offense demanded justice, and they devised a cunning plan to exact their revenge. Feigning agreement to the marriage proposal, Simeon and Levi told Shechem and the men of his city that they would only consent to the union if every male in the city was circumcised. Shechem and Hamor, eager for the alliance, agreed, and the men of the city underwent the procedure. On the third day, when the men were still in pain and unable to defend themselves, Simeon and Levi took up their swords and attacked. They slaughtered every male in the city, including Shechem and Hamor, and plundered the city, taking its women, children, and possessions as spoils of war. While their actions were driven by a sense of loyalty to Dinah, their violence went far beyond what was necessary or justified. When Jacob learned of the massacre, he was horrified and rebuked them sharply, saying, "You have brought trouble on me by making me a stench to the inhabitants of the land. My numbers are few, and if they gather against me, I and my household will be destroyed." Simeon and Levi, however, were unapologetic, responding defiantly, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" This exchange highlights the depth of their anger and their unwavering sense of justice, but it also reveals their inability to consider the broader consequences of their actions. Their violence created a lasting rift between them and their father, and this was reflected in Jacob's final blessings. When addressing Simeon and Levi on his deathbed, Jacob grouped them together and condemned their anger. "Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly, for they have killed men in their anger and hamstrung oxen as they pleased. Cursed be their anger so fierce and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel." This prophecy was fulfilled in the fates of their descendants. The tribe of Simeon was eventually absorbed into the tribe of Judah, losing its distinct identity. Levi's descendants, on the other hand, found redemption in their zealous devotion to God. During the Israelites' journey through the wilderness, the Levites stood apart by defending God's holiness during the incident of the golden calf, and they were set apart as the priestly tribe, tasked with caring for the tabernacle and leading Israel in worship. Simeon and Levi's story is a testament to the dual-edged nature of passion. While their loyalty and courage were admirable, their lack of restraint turned these qualities into liabilities. Yet, Levi's later redemption shows that even those who falter can find a new purpose when they align themselves with God's will. Judah, the brother redeemed. Judah, the fourth son of Jacob and Leah, plays one of the most transformative roles in the family's story. Unlike his older brothers, who were marred by instability, violence, or recklessness, Judah's narrative is one of personal growth, redemption, and leadership. At first, Judah's actions mirrored the same moral failures and selfishness seen in his brothers. However, through a series of painful experiences and life-changing moments, Judah rose to become a man of integrity and responsibility, earning a place of honor among Jacob's sons. Judah first emerges as a significant figure in the story of Joseph. Consumed by jealousy over their father's favoritism, the brothers plotted to kill Joseph, who had been gifted the multicolored coat and shared dreams of ruling over them. While Reuben initially intervened to prevent Joseph's death, it was Judah who proposed selling Joseph to passing Ishmaelite traders instead. Judah's suggestion was pragmatic. It allowed the brothers to rid themselves of Joseph without bloodshed, and they could profit from the sale. He reasoned, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." Though less violent than murder, Judah's choice was still an act of betrayal. By selling Joseph, he directly contributed to the suffering that would later haunt the entire family. Joseph's sale also plunged their father Jacob into deep grief, as the brothers deceived him into believing Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. For years, Judah lived with the guilt of this act, carrying the weight of what they had done. However, Judah's life took a more personal and painful turn, as detailed in Genesis 38. After the Joseph incident, Judah separated from his brothers and moved to Canaan, where he married a Canaanite woman and had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. His family's story became entangled with tragedy when his eldest son, married a woman named Tamar, but was struck down by God for his wickedness. According to the custom of Levirate marriage, Judah instructed his second son, Onan, to marry Tamar and produce an heir for his deceased brother. However, Onan refused to fulfill his duty, and he too was struck down by God. Fearing for the life of his youngest son, Shelah, Judah withheld him from Tamar, breaking his promise to provide her with a husband. This left Tamar in a vulnerable and desperate position. Widowed twice and denied the opportunity to bear children, she devised a bold and risky plan to secure her place in the family. Disguising herself as a prostitute, she waited by the roadside, knowing Judah would pass by. Judah, not recognizing her, solicited her and offered a young goat as payment. Tamar requested his seal, cord, and staff as collateral until the goat could be delivered. When Judah later sent the goat, Tamar was nowhere to be found. Months later, Judah learned that Tamar was pregnant and, unaware of the truth, demanded that she be punished for immorality. As she was brought out for judgment, Tamar presented Judah's seal, cord, and staff, revealing him as the father of her child. Confronted with his hypocrisy, Judah made a startling admission, saying, "She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah." This moment marked a turning point in Judah's character. Unlike his past actions, Judah took full responsibility for his wrongdoing and acknowledged Tamar's integrity. Tamar later gave birth to twin sons, Perez and Zerah, with Perez becoming an ancestor of King David and, ultimately, Jesus Christ. Judah's line, tainted by failure and scandal, was redeemed by God's grace, showing that even the messiest of lives can be used for his purposes. Judah's transformation became fully evident years later, during the family's reunion with Joseph in Egypt. When famine forced Jacob's sons to seek food in Egypt, they unknowingly came before their brother Joseph, now the governor of the land. Joseph, still concealing his identity, accused them of being spies and demanded that they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to prove their honesty. This posed a major dilemma for the brothers, as Jacob was deeply protective of Benjamin, the last surviving son of Rachel, or so he believed. Reluctantly, Jacob allowed Benjamin to go, but only after Judah pledged to take full responsibility for his safety. He said to his father, "I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life." Judah's leadership and willingness to take responsibility signaled a major change in his character. This transformation was further demonstrated when Joseph tested his brothers by planting a silver cup in Benjamin's sack and accusing him of theft. Faced with the prospect of Benjamin becoming Joseph's slave, Judah stepped forward and offered himself as a substitute. In one of the most moving speeches in the Bible, Judah pleaded with Joseph, saying, "Now then, please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come upon my father." This self-sacrificial act revealed the depth of Judah's transformation. The man who once sold his brother into slavery was now willing to become a slave himself to protect his family. It was this act of courage and compassion that finally broke Joseph's resolve, leading him to reveal his identity and forgive his brothers. Judah's actions helped bring healing and reconciliation to a family fractured by betrayal and grief. Jacob's final blessing to Judah reflects his rise to prominence and leadership among his brothers. Unlike the harsh words spoken over Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, Judah's blessing was one of honor and prophecy. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. This prophecy established Judah as the ancestor of the royal line of Israel, culminating in King David and ultimately the Messiah, Jesus Christ. The imagery of the lion symbolized strength, authority, and leadership, while the reference to the scepter foretold the enduring rule of Judah's descendants. Judah's story is one of redemption and hope. His early failures did not define him. Instead, he allowed his experiences to shape him into a man of integrity and selflessness. His transformation stands as a powerful reminder that it is never too late to change, and that God can use even the most broken lives to accomplish his purposes. Dan, the serpent who judges his people. Dan, the fifth son of Jacob and the firstborn to Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, occupies a unique and enigmatic role in the family. His name, which means to judge, reflected Rachel's belief that God had heard her struggle and intervened in her favor by providing her with a child through her servant. While Dan's story in the Bible is not as extensively detailed as some of his brothers, the prophetic words spoken over him by Jacob and later by Moses shed light on his character and the legacy of his tribe. Jacob's blessing to Dan in Genesis 49 is striking and filled with complex imagery. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels so that its rider tumbles backward. This prophecy contains a mix of both promise and warning. On one hand, Dan is depicted as a leader and a judge, someone who will uphold justice for his people. This suggests a sense of responsibility and authority within the tribe of Dan. However, the imagery of the serpent and the viper points to a darker side, one associated with cunning, deception, and a potential for causing harm. The metaphor of the snake biting the horse's heel and causing the rider to fall evokes a sense of treachery, subtle yet impactful. This duality in Dan's nature is reflected in the history of his descendants. The tribe of Dan initially showed great potential and was assigned territory along the western coastal plain of the Promised Land. However, instead of fully conquering their allotted land and driving out the Canaanites, they struggled to establish themselves and eventually moved north to seek a new settlement. This relocation marked a significant shift as the tribe of Dan captured the city of Laish and renamed it Dan. While this conquest demonstrated their determination and resourcefulness, it also revealed their tendency to follow their own path rather than adhere strictly to God's commands. This tendency became even more apparent when the tribe of Dan introduced idolatry into Israel. Judges 18 recounts how the Danites set up a graven image in their new city, departing from the worship of the one true God. This act of idolatry had lasting consequences, as it symbolized the spiritual compromise that would plague Israel for generations. The mention of the serpent in Jacob's blessing also points to a specific moment in Israel's history. Many scholars and readers of the Bible associate this imagery with Samson, the most famous judge to come from the tribe of Dan. Samson, whose story is told in the book of Judges, was a man of incredible physical strength and great potential. Yet his life was marred by impulsiveness, poor decisions, and spiritual compromise. While he ultimately delivered Israel from the Philistines, his personal flaws mirrored the struggles of his tribe, great promise undermined by a lack of discipline and faithfulness. Moses' blessing for Dan, found in Deuteronomy 33, is similarly brief yet cryptic. Dan is a lion's cub, springing out of Bashan. The image of a lion conveys strength, boldness, and ferocity, contrasting sharply with Jacob's earlier portrayal of a serpent. This dual imagery underscores the complexity of Dan's character and legacy. While the tribe possessed strength and potential, their history also included moments of moral and spiritual failure. Dan's story serves as a warning about the dangers of using strength and cunning without a foundation of integrity and obedience to God. The tribe's descent into idolatry and compromise stands as a stark reminder that even those called to leadership can falter when they stray from God's path. Yet, the legacy of Dan also highlights the potential for individuals and tribes to rise to positions of influence and strength when they embrace their God-given roles. Naphtali, the graceful doe who brings beautiful words. Naphtali, the sixth son of Jacob and the second born to Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, is one of the quieter figures among Jacob's sons. His name, which means "my struggle," was chosen by Rachel as a reflection of the intense rivalry between herself and her sister Leah. Rachel saw Naphtali's birth as a personal victory in this competition, declaring, "I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won." While Naphtali's individual story is not elaborated on in the Bible, the blessings spoken over him by Jacob and Moses provide insight into his character and the unique qualities of his tribe. Jacob's blessing in Genesis 49 paints a picture of grace and beauty. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful words. The imagery of a doe, a graceful, swift, and free creature, suggests that Naphtali's descendants would embody agility, freedom, and peace. The reference to beautiful words implies a gift for eloquence, expression, and perhaps wisdom. These qualities distinguished Naphtali's tribe from the more militaristic or combative roles taken by some of the other tribes. Moses' blessing in Deuteronomy 33 builds on this theme, highlighting the abundance and prosperity of Naphtali's inheritance. Naphtali is abounding with the favor of the Lord and is full of his blessing. He will inherit southward to the lake. The mention of abounding with favor emphasizes the tribe's unique relationship with God and their enjoyment of his blessings. Naphtali's territory, located in the lush region near the Sea of Galilee, was known for its natural beauty and fertility. This area provided a peaceful and abundant life for Naphtali's descendants, reflecting the grace and freedom described in Jacob's blessing. The tribe of Naphtali also played an important role in Israel's history, particularly during times of conflict. Despite the peaceful nature suggested by their blessings, Naphtali's people were known for their courage and swiftness in battle. Judges 4 tells the story of Barak, a leader from the tribe of Naphtali, who under the guidance of the prophetess Deborah led Israel to victory over the Canaanite general Sisera. This moment of bravery and faith demonstrated Naphtali's ability to rise to the occasion and fulfill their calling when needed. Naphtali's legacy is one of balance, grace paired with strength, beauty paired with resilience. The tribe's history reflects the blessings spoken over them, showing that they embraced their God-given gifts while remaining faithful to their role in Israel's larger story. Naphtali's story reminds us of the importance of living in alignment with God's blessings. His descendants enjoyed a life of peace and abundance, yet they were also ready to act with courage and faith when called upon. The image of the graceful doe encourages us to move through life with both freedom and purpose, using our gifts to bring beauty, wisdom, and strength to the world around us. Gad, the troop that triumphs. Gad, the seventh son of Jacob and the firstborn to Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, was named with a sense of joy and victory. Upon his birth, Leah declared, "What good fortune!" Gad's name, which means good fortune or troop, carried prophetic significance that would define both his character and the destiny of his descendants. Jacob's blessing to Gad in Genesis 49 is short yet powerful. Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. This prophecy portrays Gad as a tribe that would face constant challenges and adversity. Positioned east of the Jordan River, Gad's territory left them vulnerable to attacks from neighboring nations and raiding parties. Yet, despite these challenges, the tribe of Gad developed a reputation for resilience and strength. They were known as fierce warriors who could hold their own against overwhelming odds. The phrase, "he will attack them at their heels," suggests that Gad's people would not only defend themselves, but also strike back with determination and precision. Moses' blessing in Deuteronomy 33 emphasizes the tribe's valor and their role as protectors of Israel. "Blessed is he who enlarges Gad's domain. Gad lives there like a lion, tearing at arm or head." The imagery of a lion underscores the tribe's ferocity and bravery in battle. Gad's descendants were among the most valiant fighters in Israel, often serving as the first line of defense against external threats. During the conquest of Canaan, the Gadites proved their loyalty and courage by helping their fellow tribes secure the land west of the Jordan before returning to settle their own territory. Gad's story is one of endurance, strength, and loyalty. While their position on the outskirts of Israel made them vulnerable, they rose to the challenge and became a symbol of resilience. Their legacy reminds us that even in the face of adversity, we can stand firm and fight for what is right, trusting in God's provision and strength. Asher, the tribe of abundance and blessing. Asher, the eighth son of Jacob and the second born to Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, was named in celebration and joy. Upon his birth, Leah proclaimed, "How happy I am! The women will call me happy." The name Asher, meaning happy or blessed, reflected Leah's hope that her son would bring fortune and contentment to the family. Asher's story and legacy are relatively understated in the Bible, but the blessings spoken over him by Jacob and Moses highlight his tribe's unique contribution to the nation of Israel. Jacob's blessing to Asher in Genesis 49 emphasizes prosperity and abundance. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. This prophecy portrays Asher as a tribe associated with wealth, fertility, and an ability to produce the finest goods. Unlike some of the other tribes, who were characterized by their roles in warfare or leadership, Asher's legacy was tied to prosperity and a life of peace. His descendants were given land in the fertile northern region of Canaan near the Mediterranean coast, an area known for its olive groves, vineyards, and rich soil. Moses' blessing for Asher, recorded in Deuteronomy 33, reinforces this theme of abundance. Most blessed of sons is Asher. Let him be favored by his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil. The bolts of your gates will be iron and bronze, and your strength will equal your days. The imagery here is striking. The phrase, "dip his foot in oil," likely alludes to the olive oil produced in Asher's territory, a symbol of wealth and blessing in the ancient world. The mention of iron and bronze suggests security and strength, indicating that Asher's land would be both prosperous and well protected. Moses' words also highlight the tribe's harmonious relationship with the other tribes, as Asher was described as favored by his brothers. The tribe of Asher did not distinguish itself through military conquests or dramatic leadership roles, but its contribution to Israel was no less significant. Asher's rich land and agricultural productivity made it a source of provision for the nation, fulfilling the prophecy that they would provide delicacies fit for a king. In later biblical history, the tribe's territory became a center of prosperity and trade, enriching not only its own people but also the larger community of Israel. Asher's legacy reminds us that blessings come in many forms. While some tribes were known for their strength in battle or their spiritual leadership, Asher's role was to bring joy, abundance, and peace. His story encourages us to recognize and embrace the unique gifts and callings God has given us, knowing that every role, whether grand or quiet, has its place in His greater plan. Issachar, the strong donkey bearing burdens. Issachar, the ninth son of Jacob and Leah, was born under unique circumstances that reflected Leah's perseverance and resourcefulness. His name, which means reward or hire, was chosen by Leah after an unusual exchange with her sister Rachel. Desperate for Jacob's attention, Leah traded Rachel some mandrakes, believed to aid fertility, in exchange for a night with their husband. This unconventional deal resulted in Leah conceiving Issachar, whom she viewed as a reward from God for her persistence. Jacob's blessing to Issachar in Genesis 49 offers a vivid and complex depiction of the tribe's character. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. He saw that his resting place was good and that the land was pleasant, so he bent his shoulder to the burden and became a servant at forced labor. The imagery of a strong donkey suggests both physical strength and a willingness to work hard. Issachar's descendants were known for their industrious nature, embracing their role as laborers and caretakers of the land. The reference to the tribe's resting place being good reflects the fertile and peaceful territory they were allotted in the Jezreel Valley, one of the most agriculturally rich regions of Canaan. However, the phrase "became a servant at forced labor" carries a note of caution. It hints at the tribe's tendency to prioritize comfort and stability over freedom, which could lead to complacency or subservience. Moses' blessing for Issachar, recorded in Deuteronomy 33, complements this image by highlighting the tribe's spiritual contributions. Rejoice, Issachar, in your tents. This blessing suggests a life of peace and contentment, with the tribe thriving in their settled agricultural lifestyle. The phrase "in your tents" may also allude to a scholarly and spiritual role, as Issachar's descendants were later known for their wisdom and understanding of the times. According to Jewish tradition, the tribe of Issachar excelled in studying the Torah and interpreting the calendar, becoming a source of guidance and knowledge for the nation. Issachar's story is one of balance, strength paired with humility, hard work coupled with contentment. While the tribe may not have pursued power or dominance, their contributions were vital to the stability and prosperity of Israel. Their example reminds us of the value of diligence, wisdom, and a willingness to serve, even in quieter roles. Zebulun, the merchant of the sea. Zebulun, the 10th son of Jacob and Leah, was born after Issachar and given a name that reflected Leah's hope for honor and recognition. The name Zebulun, meaning dwelling or honor, was chosen by Leah as an expression of her longing for Jacob to honor her after bearing him 6 sons. While Zebulun's personal story is not explored in detail in the Bible, the blessings spoken over him reveal his tribe's unique identity and role in Israel's history. Jacob's blessing to Zebulun in Genesis 49 is distinctive. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend toward Sidon. This prophecy highlights Zebulun's future as a tribe associated with trade, commerce, and the sea. While Zebulun's territory did not directly border the Mediterranean, it was strategically located near key trade routes and coastal cities, giving the tribe access to maritime commerce. Zebulun's descendants became skilled merchants, engaging in trade and acting as a bridge between Israel and neighboring nations. Moses' blessing for Zebulun in Deuteronomy 33 celebrates the tribe's adventurous and entrepreneurial spirit. Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar, in your tents. The contrast between Zebulun's going out and Issachar's tents highlights the complementary relationship between the two tribes. While Issachar focused on agriculture and scholarship, Zebulun thrived in trade and exploration. Together, these tribes represented a balance of stability and expansion, local prosperity and international outreach. Zebulun's legacy as a tribe of merchants and explorers underscores the importance of embracing opportunities beyond one's immediate circumstances. Their role in connecting Israel to the wider world through trade enriched not only their own tribe, but the entire nation. Zebulun's story reminds us of the value of enterprise and the impact of stepping out in faith to pursue God-given opportunities. Joseph, the fruitful vine of triumph and forgiveness. Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob and the firstborn of Rachel, holds a unique and pivotal place in the biblical narrative. Born after years of Rachel's struggle with barrenness, Joseph was cherished by Jacob as the son of his most beloved wife. This deep and obvious favoritism caused intense jealousy and animosity among Joseph's older brothers, sowing seeds of betrayal that would shape the rest of Joseph's life. Jacob's love for Joseph was displayed in many ways, but none more striking than the gift of the richly ornamented coat, often referred to as the coat of many colors. This special robe symbolized not only Jacob's affection for Joseph, but also his intention to give Joseph a position of authority and leadership over his brothers, even though Joseph was one of the youngest. The brothers' resentment toward Joseph was further fueled by his dreams, which he openly shared with them. In one of his dreams, Joseph saw sheaves of grain in a field, with his brothers' sheaves bowing down to his. In another, he dreamed of the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing before him. These dreams foretold Joseph's future rise to power, but to his brothers, they seemed arrogant and self-serving. Even Jacob rebuked Joseph for his dreams, though he also quietly pondered their meaning. Joseph's life took a dramatic turn when his brothers, unable to contain their jealousy any longer, conspired against him. One day, as Joseph approached them in the fields, wearing his distinctive robe, the brothers plotted to kill him. However, Reuben, the eldest, persuaded them not to shed blood and suggested they throw Joseph into a pit instead, intending to rescue him later. While Reuben was away, Judah proposed selling Joseph to a group of Ishmaelite traders passing by. The brothers stripped Joseph of his robe and sold him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver, leaving him at the mercy of the traders. To cover up their betrayal, the brothers dipped Joseph's robe in goat's blood and presented it to Jacob, who was devastated upon believing his beloved son had been killed by a wild animal. Jacob's grief was overwhelming, and he refused to be comforted, declaring that he would mourn for Joseph until his own death. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken to Egypt, where his life would unfold in ways that none of them could have imagined. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Despite his circumstances, Joseph quickly rose to a position of trust within Potiphar's household. The Bible describes Joseph as a man of integrity and wisdom, with God's favor evident in all that he did. Potiphar entrusted him with the management of his entire household, and Joseph's diligence brought prosperity to Potiphar's estate. However, Joseph's integrity was soon tested when Potiphar's wife, captivated by his good looks, tried to seduce him. Joseph, loyal to both God and his master, refused her advances, saying, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Enraged by his rejection, Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of assaulting her, leading to his imprisonment. While in prison, Joseph once again found favor with those in authority. The warden placed him in charge of the other prisoners, recognizing Joseph's unique abilities and God's presence in his life. During this time, Joseph interpreted the dreams of two fellow prisoners, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. To the cupbearer, Joseph foretold restoration to his position, while to the baker, he predicted execution. Both interpretations came to pass exactly as Joseph had said. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him when he returned to Pharaoh's service, but the cupbearer forgot him, leaving Joseph in prison for 2 more years. Despite these setbacks, Joseph's faith in God remained steadfast. At the appointed time, Pharaoh himself began having troubling dreams that none of his wise men or magicians could interpret. It was then that the cupbearer remembered Joseph and spoke of his ability to interpret dreams. Joseph was summoned from prison, cleaned up, and brought before Pharaoh. Pharaoh described his dreams: 7 healthy cows being devoured by 7 gaunt ones, and 7 plump ears of grain swallowed by 7 thin ones. Joseph, acknowledging that interpretations come from God, explained that the dreams predicted 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of severe famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to appoint someone to oversee the storage of surplus grain during the years of plenty to prepare for the famine. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph's wisdom and insight that he appointed him as second in command over all of Egypt, giving him authority over the nation's resources. Joseph's rise from prisoner to ruler was sudden and extraordinary, demonstrating God's providence and the fulfillment of Joseph's earlier dreams. During the years of abundance, Joseph oversaw the collection and storage of grain throughout Egypt, ensuring that the nation would have enough to survive the famine. He married Asenath, the daughter of an Egyptian priest, and had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Their names reflected Joseph's journey, Manasseh meaning God has made me forget all my trouble, and Ephraim meaning God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. When the famine struck, it extended beyond Egypt to neighboring lands, including Canaan, where Jacob and his family were struggling to survive. Hearing that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob sent 10 of his sons to buy food, keeping Benjamin, the youngest, at home. Unbeknownst to them, the powerful Egyptian official they would meet was their long-lost brother, Joseph. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them immediately, but they did not recognize him. He decided to test them, accusing them of being spies and demanding that they bring their youngest brother Benjamin to prove their honesty. The brothers, unaware of Joseph's identity, were filled with fear and guilt, recalling their past sin against him. Joseph imprisoned Simeon as collateral and sent the others back to Canaan with grain, instructing them to return with Benjamin. Jacob was reluctant to let Benjamin go, fearing for his safety. But when the famine worsened, Judah persuaded Jacob by taking personal responsibility for Benjamin's well-being. The brothers returned to Egypt with Benjamin, and Joseph, overcome with emotion at seeing his only full brother, prepared a feast for them. He continued to test their character by planting his silver cup in Benjamin's sack and accusing him of theft. When the brothers pleaded for Benjamin's release, Judah stepped forward and offered himself as a slave in Benjamin's place, saying, "Please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers." This act of self-sacrifice demonstrated Judah's transformation and convinced Joseph that his brothers had changed. Overcome with emotion, Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, saying, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" The brothers were stunned and terrified, but Joseph reassured them, saying, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Joseph's forgiveness and understanding of God's greater plan brought healing to the family. He invited Jacob and the entire household to settle in Egypt, providing for them during the remaining years of famine. Jacob's joy at being reunited with Joseph was immense, and he blessed Joseph's 2 sons, adopting them as his own. Jacob's blessing to Joseph in Genesis 49 reflects his life of suffering, faith, and triumph. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel. The blessings of your father are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountains, than the bounty of the age-old hills. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Joseph's story is one of redemption, forgiveness, and God's providence. He rose from betrayal and slavery to become a leader who saved countless lives, including the family that had wronged him. His life reminds us that God can use even the most painful experiences for good, weaving them into his greater plan. Benjamin, the beloved son and fierce warrior. Benjamin, the 12th and youngest son of Jacob, was born under bittersweet circumstances. As the second son of Rachel, Jacob's most beloved wife, Benjamin represented the fulfillment of Rachel's deepest longing for children. However, the tribe of Benjamin was known for producing skilled warriors. Judges 20 highlights their military prowess when the Benjamites, though vastly outnumbered, fought valiantly against the rest of Israel during a civil conflict. While their tenacity and courage were undeniable, this fierce nature also led to moments of internal strife and destruction. However, the tribe of Benjamin would also produce some of Israel's most notable figures, including King Saul, Israel's first monarch, and the Apostle Paul, formerly Saul of Tarsus, who became one of the most influential figures in early Christianity. Benjamin's legacy is one of strength, loyalty, and resilience. Though his role in the biblical narrative is quieter compared to his brothers, his tribe left an indelible mark on Israel's history. His life serves as a reminder of the powerful bond of family and the ability to bring people together, even in the midst of turmoil and division. The legacy of Jacob's sons, a nation forged through trials. Through blessings and trials, betrayal and redemption, the 12 sons of Jacob became the foundation of the nation of Israel. Each son's unique strengths and weaknesses contributed to the rich tapestry of their collective story. Reuben's instability, Simeon and Levi's fierce tempers, Judah's redemption, Joseph's unwavering faith, and Benjamin's quiet strength all played a part in shaping the identity of the 12 tribes. The 12 sons remind us of the complexities of human nature, how flaws and virtues coexist, and how God can use both for his purposes. Despite their failures, God fulfilled his covenant through them, building a nation that would carry his promises to future generations. Jacob's final words over his sons reflected not only their individual destinies, but also the character of the tribes they would father. Reuben's instability disqualified him from leadership. Simeon and Levi's violence led to their dispersal. Judah rose to prominence as the ancestor of kings and the Messiah. Joseph's suffering and triumph brought life to many, while Benjamin's tenacity secured a lasting legacy of courage. The tribes of Israel, a legacy shaped by God's plan. The lives of Jacob's 12 sons not only tell individual stories of struggle, redemption, and growth, but also lay the foundation for the 12 tribes of Israel, a nation chosen to carry God's covenant. Each tribe inherited traits, blessings, and prophecies tied to their forefather, and together they formed a collective identity that shaped Israel's history, culture, and faith. From these tribes came leaders, warriors, priests, and kings, as well as moments of triumph and failure that demonstrated God's unwavering faithfulness to his people. The legacy of Jacob's 12 sons is not one of perfection, but of purpose. Each tribe reflects aspects of human nature, strength and weakness, loyalty and betrayal, faith and doubt. Yet through their descendants, God worked to establish a nation that would bear his name and serve as a light to the world. Let's take a closer look at the broader impact and significance of the tribes of Israel. The tribes and their territories. After the Israelites escaped Egypt and wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, God led them into the Promised Land under the leadership of Joshua. It was during this time that the descendants of Jacob's 12 sons were allotted specific territories, fulfilling the prophecies and blessings spoken by Jacob and Moses. Reuben, despite being the firstborn, Reuben's tribe settled east of the Jordan River, in land that was fertile yet vulnerable to outside attack. Reuben's diminished standing due to his personal failures mirrored the relative obscurity of his tribe in Israel's history. Simeon. The tribe of Simeon was scattered throughout the land, receiving its inheritance within the territory of Judah. This fulfilled Jacob's prophecy that Simeon would be dispersed among the tribes, a consequence of their violent actions during the massacre at Shechem. Levi. Unlike the other tribes, Levi received no specific territory, but was set apart as the priestly tribe. The Levites were given cities throughout Israel, along with the responsibility of serving in the tabernacle, and later the temple. Their role as spiritual leaders fulfilled the redemption of Levi's descendants after their zeal for God during the Golden Calf incident. Judah. The tribe of Judah received a large and strategically significant territory in the southern part of the Promised Land. As prophesied by Jacob, Judah rose to prominence, becoming the royal tribe from which King David and ultimately Jesus Christ descended. Judah's lion-like strength and leadership established it as the heart of Israel's spiritual and political life. Dan. The tribe of Dan initially settled in a region near the Mediterranean but struggled to maintain control of their land. Eventually, they relocated to the far north, capturing the city of Laish and renaming it Dan. The tribe's association with idolatry and moral compromise reflected the darker aspects of Jacob's prophecy about Dan being like a serpent. Naphtali. Naphtali's descendants settled in a fertile region near the Sea of Galilee. Known for their bravery in battle and their peaceful lifestyle, the tribe of Naphtali fulfilled the imagery of a graceful doe bringing beautiful words. Their land became a center of commerce and culture in later years. Gad. Located east of the Jordan River, Gad's territory made them frontline defenders of Israel. Known for their military prowess, the Gadites were described as fierce warriors who attacked with the precision of a lion, fulfilling Jacob's prophecy about their resilience in the face of raiders. Asher. The tribe of Asher inherited a coastal region rich in agriculture and resources. Known for their prosperity, the Asherites provided food and delicacies fit for a king. Their blessings of abundance and peace were a direct reflection of the prophecies spoken over their forefather. Issachar. Settling in the fertile Jezreel Valley, Issachar's tribe became known for their hard work and wisdom. Their peaceful, agricultural lifestyle fulfilled the imagery of a strong donkey bearing burdens and finding rest in a good land. Zebulun. Positioned near key trade routes, Zebulun's descendants became known as merchants and seafarers. Their role in trade and commerce fulfilled Jacob's prophecy that Zebulun would dwell by the seashore and serve as a haven for ships. Joseph. Joseph's double portion was fulfilled through his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who each became the head of a tribe. Ephraim grew to be a dominant and influential tribe, while Manasseh inherited vast lands on both sides of the Jordan River. Joseph's legacy of fruitfulness and blessing was reflected in the prosperity and prominence of his descendants. Benjamin. The smallest of the tribes, Benjamin inherited a central and strategically important territory that included Jerusalem. Known for their fierce warriors, the tribe of Benjamin produced key figures such as King Saul and the Apostle Paul, fulfilling Jacob's prophecy of a ravenous wolf dividing the plunder. The spiritual and symbolic legacy of the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes of Israel are more than just historical entities. They carry deep spiritual and symbolic meaning. Their unity as a nation, despite their diverse roles and characteristics, reflects the concept of completeness and divine order symbolized by the number 12. This theme is echoed throughout the Bible, from the 12 apostles chosen by Jesus to the 12 gates of the New Jerusalem described in Revelation. The tribes also serve as a microcosm of humanity, imperfect yet loved, flawed yet chosen. Their stories demonstrate how God can use people from all walks of life to accomplish His purposes. Whether through the repentance of Judah, the faithfulness of Joseph, or the courage of Benjamin, the tribes remind us that God's plans often involve redeeming our weaknesses and turning them into strengths. Lessons from the lives of Jacob's sons. The stories of Jacob's 12 sons and their tribes invite us to reflect on our own lives. Each son's journey highlights different aspects of human nature and the transformative power of God's grace. Reuben teaches us about the cost of instability and the importance of self-control. Simeon and Levi remind us of the dangers of unchecked anger and the need for redemption. Judah inspires us with his story of growth, repentance, and leadership. Joseph exemplifies forgiveness, faith, and perseverance through trials. Benjamin shows the power of loyalty and quiet strength. Their lives challenge us to ask, how are we using our gifts? Are we allowing our failures to define us? Or are we seeking transformation and redemption through God's grace? The 12 sons of Jacob remind us that no mistake is too great for God to redeem, no path too broken for Him to straighten. God took this imperfect family and used them to build a nation that would carry His covenant, prepare the way for the Messiah, and ultimately bring hope to the world. Join the journey. If this exploration of Jacob's sons and their tribes has inspired you, don't let the reflections stop here. Take a moment to share these lessons with others, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth journeys through the Bible. Together, let's delve deeper into God's Word, uncovering the truths that continue to shape and guide our lives today. Let the stories of these 12 men challenge you to embrace both your strengths and your weaknesses, trusting that God can use every part of your story for His greater purpose. Like Jacob's sons, we are all part of a larger plan, one that spans generations and brings glory to God. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to exploring more timeless lessons with you. Together, let's walk in faith, grow in wisdom, and carry forward the light of God's promises.